question. Okay, cool. Welcome to the Open Hour. This is going to be a big one today. For those who don't know me, I'm Cassandra Faris. I am the community manager at SaltStack. What that means basically is that my job is to help our core team and our community collaborate together more effectively and try to just make life easier for our contributor base. So today, we really only have one topic for the Open Hour once we get started. But the quick kind of news and updates, we are still running the triage Twitch stream. The research and development Twitch stream is on hold for a few weeks while Tyler gets settled into a new place that he's moving into. So I will put that back on the calendar once that comes back into place. The documentation jam. We had a docs clinic yesterday where Derek and Elisa walked us through how to set up your environment, how to contribute documentation. We'll get that video posted for you so that if you'd like to participate in the documentation jam, if you watch that clinic video ahead of time, you'll be able to be set up and ready to go for next Wednesday. Basically, what we're going to do in this documentation jam is the big piece of feedback we're hearing from everybody consistently is that our documentation has room for improvement. And so to kind of get a jump start on that and bring people together, we're basically setting aside a full day, Wednesday, October 7th, to do this jam. We will be focusing on 3 different tracks in the documentation jam. So we'll work on module case studies, issue creation, and issue triage. And I'm excited that we have a keynoter who will be speaking. She is a developer relations program manager at Google, works in documentations, and founded something called wordnick.com. And her name is Erin McKean. She will be speaking in the afternoon during the documentation jam. If you would like to RSVP, I will put that link in the chat. And you can join us either via Zoom or Twitch, whichever you want. I'll basically just be on Zoom for 8 hours next Wednesday with different team members. Next up, super exciting news, we have SaltConf Virtual. That is going to be October 29th. The call for proposals is complete, and I know that we're planning to have the full agenda and schedule out here in the next couple weeks. SaltConf will include kind of places for working groups to get together, for community members to find out more ways to get involved. And so that's going to be something that we want to make sure that SaltConf is as relevant to our contributors as it is to maybe some other users. And finally, when it comes to SEPs, we still have the Tiamat SEP number 26 and the runtime release SEP number 25 are active. This morning, I created SEP number 27. That is about building the community advisory board. This is was my first time writing a SEP and my first time contributing it to our branch. I had to do it really quickly, and so somebody had already pointed out to say that it needs formatted. After this meeting, I'll go back and format the SEP. But you can go ahead and see the proposal, see what we've envisioned for this community advisory board, and I think we'll probably bring that up for discussion next week once people have had a chance to look at it. Does anybody else have any other housekeeping items to run through?
Cassandra, I actually just got a DM question, which was about SaltConf. So to confirm, yes, the call for speakers did close, and I'll ask, I think Alex is on the phone to confirm that. But I think there are still opportunities for people to participate in a different way other than just a dedicated speaking session that we will share and propose. And that came from Ralph.
All right, awesome. So if people want to submit a talk or have a way to participate, should they contact me, Janae? What do you want them to do?
And if I may,
just to confirm, Mo, you are correct. The call for speakers has ended. If you've got a great idea, though, we'll still consider it, right? We know there's still great ideas out there in the community that may come in. In that case, if you can get hold of Janae, she's on lead for the SaltConf. If you don't have that number, then yeah, get hold of anybody on the open team, and I'm sure they can pass it over to Janae and the marketing team.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. One other thing, sorry, Ralph is asking Cassandra, and I think I want to highlight this because I'm not sure that we had consistency in the various folks who attended the open hour. So you are correct, yes, and this is sorry to answer Ralph's question. The SEP is related to the creation of a community advisory board. And so that's actually in motion. If you do go back to the YouTube, listen to the replays and or some of the notes that have been published by Cassandra and team, there'll be much more details on that. But of course, the SEP is now the right forum to go ahead, please give feedback and so on. We're all very excited to get that launched as soon as possible. It's been making, and thanks to the community members who proposed that idea, and early thoughts and work by Wayne, an incredible push by Cassandra for us to sort of get this going ASAP. So folks, please do contribute your thoughts and ideas so we can shape this together in the SEP. Thank you.
All right. And with that, so I know everybody had seen where I posted in Slack that we would be answering questions about the acquisition. What I did is yesterday I went through the general channel, the acquisition channel, and then the questions that you all had DM'd me or posted in that thread. Compiled those questions, kind of put them into a few different sets. Obviously, a lot of the biggest questions were around the future of Salt Open, future of Salt Enterprise, what are people going to have access to, and what's community support going to look like. And so that list of questions has been sent to Tom and Mo, and they are going to be basically covering all those items. So I would say please hold questions on this and discussion until the end, or do you want to do that as we go, guys?
No, I think that's a great idea, Cassandra. I think first, thank you. We got an abundance of questions and comments. Maybe I can just spend 30 seconds, addressing some of the generalities of this, but I'll get Tom to give us an overview actually of the acquisition. I think that will be a great level set around what's happening, and then we'll dive to each question, take a break, take questions here from folks, please put them in the chat, and then we'll go back to that list and cover them. From my point of view, I just want to start off by something slightly related, but a very unique angle on this topic, which is to just say thank you. Thank you for the incredible amount of what I would call cards and letters that have come from across the community and in the world, in direct DMs, in chatters, or in emails, or across the groups, for folks who have just cheered along, recognized the significance of this moment, and more importantly, have seen themselves as part of the story and this particular milestone. So thank you. That means a lot to everybody that works every day in a dedicated fashion on SALT. It is an incredible milestone, but it's a milestone. It's not a start, it's not an end, it's a milestone. And so I want to thank everybody that has sent in all of those cards and letters, who has engaged and submitted the questions. A lot of good, thoughtful questions that are out here. So with that, let me just hand it over to Tom to give us the overview of the acquisition itself, and then we'll go into the questions.
All right, thank you, Mo. This was really big news that came out a couple of days ago, and something that I'm very, very excited about. Given that, given where we are inside of an open office hours meeting, I want to make one thing very, very clear, and that is that SaltStack has been approached for acquisition numerous times in the past. This was certainly not the first time this has come up. Every time acquisition has presented itself as a plausible option, I have not been willing to maintain it unless I had a very strong conviction that the acquiring company was going to maintain our open source project. This is something that was delivered to me from VMware very early on in the process. We began our discussions about 3.5 months ago around the possibility of doing an acquisition. We had actually talked to them for a long time beforehand and worked with VMware on partnerships in the past, and et cetera. As conversations turned to acquisition, that was and continued to be one of the primary focuses, is to make sure that our open source community is well taken care of, that the way in which we develop open source software is accelerated, and that is a very important thing to VMware. VMware has made significant comments and commitments to me around how they have been working hard to transition into being a much more open source friendly company, about how they have made numerous recent acquisitions of open source, of companies that have open source projects like SaltStack, and that they have done, and that they've worked hard to take care of those projects. How they have senior executive leadership that focuses on developing open source. Now, with that said, we do plan on being able to have representatives from VMware on open office calls in the future. There are only so many questions that I can answer at this point. Some of these questions are around, is the future of Salt Open good? Those I can answer with a very strong yes. We will continue to release Salt. We will continue to, we don't have any plans around license changes or anything along those lines. But many of these questions have to do with roadmap, innovation separation, and whether or not we're going to open source more code like the SaltStack enterprise code base. I do not have answers to all of those questions. Right now, if I can just begin to go down a few of these, the top question is, what can we expect in the future for Salt Open? And that is, again, that I've received very strong commitments from VMware that they care deeply about our open source community, that they care deeply about our open source, about the open source code, the open source community, and about the contributions which have been given and that we want to see continue. It is a very important component to SaltStack, the company, that we are active participants and leaders in this community. And I want to begin by expressing my sincere thanks and gratitude to this community. When I started working on Salt in my basement in February of 2011, I never really would have really imagined that that I would be in the situation that we are today. And I'm humbled not only by an acquisition and the opportunity to continue to move forward with SaltStack inside of VMware, but I'm also humbled by the massive amounts of contributions and care that have been given to this project that I started so long ago. And that leads me to another one of these questions, which is, what's Tom going to be doing? And I am continuing with VMware. I am still leading SaltStack. And I'm very excited to be able to be more involved from an engineering perspective. Over the last few years in SaltStack, I've needed to engage much more in managing, as well as engaging much more in really keeping the business going in many respects. I expect that this acquisition is going to give me more time to come back and focus on engineering and focus on code and focus on innovation. Many of you may be aware, I haven't made significant contributions to Salt for a few years. I've been focused again on business management as well as many of the innovation projects. But you do have my commitment. I'm not going anywhere. And so if you don't like me, I'm sorry about that. Hopefully you do like me and you're happy to hear that I'm not going anywhere. Now, I'm also planning on working internally to try and continue to improve and increase communication with our community, especially in the form of more broadcasts, more content, and things of this nature. So many of you are probably aware of the Hacks podcast that I've been doing, but I want to be involved in finally getting Salt Air to be running on a smooth cadence and being able to disseminate news and information about what's happening inside of Salt on a much more regular basis. So I'm very excited to still be engaged with Salt for the foreseeable future. And and my confidence in VMware right now is very high. I have to admit, when these conversations began, I was very skeptical. And I was worried. As I began to work more closely with the team at VMware, I've become deeply impressed not only with their deep engineering expertise and their ability to really execute and deliver, but also the care that they give to the engineering which is going on inside of VMware, but also the level of emphasis that they have had around open source and the commitment that I have heard and felt expressed by them for open source moving forward. And so my fears were quickly calmed as I began to get to know the VMware team better and better. So let me dive into a few more of these questions.
Tom, if I may just make a comment about that first segment that you just covered to reinforce some of the points that you shared in there, which is just to add an additional perspective in here. The work that we've had with VMware and SaltStack, of course, as Tom said, comes in the context of partnerships, but also this particular process. But many of us have had a chance to work with VMware in other contexts, prior jobs, assignments, and so on. And I would like to say that I echo Tom's sentiment that there is strong and evident commitment by our VMware colleagues, professionals, and leadership team to invest and to support open source projects. VMware, like every large organization, is an evolving organism that is evolving organically and through acquisitions. And a lot of the recent acquisitions have really brought in a great deal of open source champions, open source projects, open source pedigree, open source understanding. I personally had a chance to collaborate directly with VMware and have grown to also admire and respect the fact that they've set themselves an internal challenge to become a top contributor in the industry, but also that the work ethic they went about in doing these projects was one of commitment as opposed to what somebody might think of as just lip service. So it was deep committed and it was seated. So I just wanted to echo that, Tom, and reassure all of us as a community that we are really gaining a great partner in VMware on this journey.
Thank you, Mo. I really appreciate that. All right, let me dive into a few more of these. Let's see. So we have things around contributors. One question is, what will the process be for community issues and PRs? Right now, there is no intention to make any changes there. We don't currently have any plans to change the use of GitHub. We have no plans to change how PRs and issues are processed. We have no plans to change the SEP process, for instance.
I disagree. We don't have a plan to change anything except to improve it. So all of the commitments we have had to get PRs in, committed faster and so on, we're still on that. We're still on that. That bugs us every morning when we wake up. So I hope we'll keep improving it.
Thanks, Mo. Can we expect open contributions to still get the same level of attention going forward? Yes. We are not planning on diminishing our current commitment to open source contributions. And we will continue to work very hard to keep up with what is a lot of fantastic contributions. Will there be changes made to platform and tooling? We have been in the process of making changes to platform and tooling for quite some time. As some of you may be aware, the majority of code inside of SaltStack has already moved to GitLab. And we've been using GitLab's CI/CD processes. Now, we've stated numerous times before that we don't intend to move Salt away from GitHub. We felt that that was too invasive. With that said, there is always the possibility, of course, at a future date that this might be a completely new proposal. But we don't have any plans to move platform and tooling in connection with the acquisition by VMware. And I'll further emphasize that VMware maintains open source projects on GitHub. So I don't accept or expect, sorry, or perceive that this is going to be a problem moving forward. Let's see. Another question is: are there any changes to licensing that we should be expecting? I do not have any information that would suggest that that is happening at this point, but I have had conversations with VMware around how they feel about certain ways in which the legal care of an open source project should occur, and those conversations are not yet done. So I don't have a super finite answer for this. With that said, they like the Apache license. I'd be really surprised if they would want to try and make any license changes, or if they would try and make any major changes to how contributions are handled from a legal perspective, outside of potentially tidying a few things up. So that's not something that I would lose sleep over. Let's see. We've got some questions around what is open and what isn't open. So I'm surprised how often I need to reemphasize a concept around open core. And the mere fact that I'm bringing it up on a call means that someone may, I don't know, impose violence on my person. Now, the concept of open core, as we have defined it, and as SaltStack has defined it publicly, is that open core is when we take an open source project and then create an enterprise version of said open source project. And that the enterprise version contains proprietary bits which restrict the innovation of the open source project. SaltStack doesn't do this. SaltStack has never done this. I have been aggressively committed to not make Salt an open core project. I feel that that is the best way to preserve our ability to innovate on an open source project. Our proprietary software is expressly designed to be able to facilitate the continued innovation of our open source platform. And this, again, this is by design, so that under circumstances and scenarios such as the one that we are now in, that the very architecture of the system protects innovation. And so what this boils down to is that our enterprise product is a separate code base. It's always been a separate code base. It does ship with some plugins that enable a Saltmaster to connect very specifically to our enterprise product. But that in no way should stifle innovation of the open source project. And so I don't expect there to be any stifling of the open source project. And I wanted to kind of lay that groundwork because some of these questions are things like, is there still going to be a community edition moving forward? There's no community edition. There's Salt, and it's fully open source. We don't need a community edition because we're not open core. There is a trial edition of SaltStack Enterprise, and I don't expect, you know, the trial strategies for proprietary software change. Another question is, should we expect SaltStack Enterprise to be open sourced? I am not making any, I'm not making any commitments around those things at this point. I don't have any commitments. I'm not going to make that kind of announcement here. That would be deeply inappropriate. So at this point, I would convey that it would be business as usual with the fact that our enterprise platform, which is a separate code base, will likely continue to be proprietary. But again, that's not a final decision or conclusion. I'm not presenting that. I'm just saying I expect business as usual there. Okay. Next question. Did VMware commit to adding additional resources to the SaltStack core development teams? I've tried to answer this a number of ways in the past, many of which have to do with the fact that SaltStack already commits more resources to its open source team than many, many other open source projects and companies that support open source projects. With that said, VMware has expressed interest to continue to commit resources to the open source project. I am not going to go over hiring plans in this setting. Again, that would be inappropriate. But I can commit to you that VMware has a continued commitment to support and help maintain the open source project. We already, inside of VMware, have access to many more resources to help the open source project continue to move forward.
And Tom, if I also can add, this is not a statement that is intended to be sort of committing something or so on, but I think that we should also, all of us as a collective set of professionals, understand that the trends that in the industry and so on that likely had occurred in the past will also likely will occur here. Whenever a project like ours has had the opportunity to join forces with a market leader and so on, there is just a natural osmosis of talent that comes in. There is an incredible amount of VMware engineers who are probably very enthusiastic about this and who contribute to open source every day, and they'll want to come in here and band with us. There'll be a variety of ecosystem partners to VMware who now view participating in the SALT project per the commitments that Tom shared is strategic, valuable, important, and so on and so forth. I've seen this happen time and again when I was part of other acquisitions, and just the incredible growth from fellow community members from many organizations, including the new parent organization, participate. This is less about the precise number that gets committed, as Tom said, and it's more around, it is reasonable to expect that that level of sort of enthusiasm will harbor additional participation.
Thank you, Mo. Let's see, where are we? All right. What should open users do now to keep using SaltStack? Do they need to create forks? No, you don't need to create forks. Heavens. We will still be releasing Salt. We will still be releasing open or maintenance releases of Salt, point releases of Salt, feature releases of Salt. This is not something that you should be worried about at all. Salt will continue to march forward. Let's see, what is the future of Tiamat and R&D and projects like POP and ITEM? So VMware has expressed a very strong interest in continuing the development of our R&D projects. This is also something that excites me. One of the things that, how do I put this? Again, we've been approached for acquisition numerous times over the years. One of the classic problems that we've run into from a potential acquirer perspective is how they view us as a business and how they view us as a purveyor of product and features. SaltStack is an extremely broad automation framework. For years, I've yelled and screamed that we should not be confined to the config management bucket. We're really just not made to be confined to the config management bucket. That wasn't my intent. It just happened to be where we gained most of our initial popularity. Now, so what that means is that SaltStack itself has such broad applicability across network automation, security automation, cloud automation, and system automation, et cetera, as well as IoT, that one of the things that made the VMware acquisition very attractive is the fact that they have come back and emphasized how much they value all of what SaltStack does, and how much they value the IoT cases and the network management cases, as well as the security cases and the classic automation, infrastructure automation cases. That broad value is something that spills over into what we're doing from an R&D perspective. A significant amount of interest has been placed by VMware in our R&D projects, and a lot of excitement there. And so I fully expect that Tiamat, POP, and ITEM, and many more of these projects are going to continue to receive more attention. And personally, I'm excited to spend more time there. Another question is Tom just going to go off into POP land? I've been in POP land for a while. I'm actually going to be spending more time in Salt land than I have in the past, and hopefully more time in POP land too. My excitement around what we have inside of plugin-oriented programming is through the roof. I am fascinated by how effective we've been able to be using the plugin-oriented programming paradigm. Okay. Another question is, I've received a few privately via the chat. Does VMware still hold an investment in Puppet? If so, how does that affect SaltStack? I will be transparent in the fact that there are certain aspects of the investments of VMware that I cannot make express comments to. So with respect to any relationships with which VMware and Puppet have, I will make no comment. The only comment that I can make is that VMware has expressed a abundantly strong, obviously, commitment to SaltStack. And that the plans which they have given us moving forward is that they're going to be working very heavily with, obviously, SaltStack inside of VMware. And what has been conveyed to me is that those who are making these decisions in VMware feel that we have the best configuration management technology. And I can't argue with them, despite any bias which may be apparent. VMware has made numerous public statements, which I will back, that they have every commitment to continue to maintain support for integrating with all of the additional systems and all of the additional components which VMware products currently integrate with, including Puppet, Chef, Ansible, and the vast array of products which VMware integrates with to solve problems. All right. Going down this list here. Will Salt continue to be its own thing, or will it be integrated into another product and become a component of something else? This ties with another question: will VMware continue to offer the existing SaltStack Enterprise SecOps as standalone products? VMware is still planning on maintaining SaltStack products. And those products are still meant to be released, et cetera, et cetera. As far as integration goes, VMware also intends on integrating Salt into more products. This ties back into something that I was saying earlier about Salt's very broad applicability. And this is something that's important to reemphasize. Salt is very good at solving lots of problems in lots of ways. And there are a number of VMware product lines that are expressing strong interest outside of some of those more obvious core products that we plan on integrating with right away. At this point, it is not okay for me to disclose exactly what products and how we're initially building integrations with VMware products. But suffice it to say, SaltStack products will continue to be available. And we plan on integrating with a number of VMware products. As time moves forward and after VMware closes the deal and takes control of SaltStack, that has not yet happened yet. We're in limbo, which is one of the reasons why I need to be incredibly careful with my answers. Once that happens, we do expect to have a little more clarity around those things. Okay, but that's something that we should expect in the coming few weeks to month. And so again, I'm just emphasizing, I can only give you so much of an answer at this point. Some of these questions I might not be able to give you an answer to ever. There's always, or ever, or until we would have some sort of, VMware would have some sort of public announcement. Let's see, why did SaltStack decide to sell the company? This is, how do I put this? This is an interesting question, because when we make when we make business level decisions around fundraising and acquisitions, there are many, many factors. And this is the sort of thing that, again, there's only so much that I should go into. But the statement that I can make, and what I think is most reflective of the decision-making process from a high level, because these sorts of decisions take months and lots of debates and lots of discussions. And they involve evaluating many, many, many financial options. From a high level, the answer of why I feel very strongly that this is a good move is because I feel that SALT's applicability is too broad and it needs accelerant. I feel strongly that VMware is going to be that accelerant for what SALT is capable of doing to allow SALT to become what it's capable of being. And that is, among many motivators, but perhaps my largest primary motivator for selling SaltStack and being one of the people pushing for this sale. I can be very transparent about the fact that I was and am fully on board for this decision, and I will take responsibility for it. And I am more than happy to own it. I feel that this is going to be the best thing for my company, and I feel this is going to be the best thing for the software, the proprietary software inside of SaltStack, and very, very importantly, I feel that it is going to be the best thing for this community. And I weighed these things very heavily around that desire to see the acceleration of SALT, because I have always been very deeply pained by the fact that I haven't felt that SALT has been able to receive the airtime it deserves, the recognition that it deserves, and the acceleration that it deserves. And again, I feel very strongly that VMware will be able to deliver that. And I feel very strong, much more strongly about it now than I did 3 months ago when we began the process. And I felt strongly then. Another question is this the death of SaltStack? Hopefully my previous answers have said no. This is not the death of SaltStack. Internal to VMware, they have communicated that they appreciate the brand, appreciate the products, and feel that our brand and products have clout and value and will move forward in a big way. Let's see. I'm looking over the remaining questions. I feel like I've really answered them. So for instance, one is SALT Open Enterprise Codebase split. They're already split. They always have been. How will product marketing and open code priorities change? We're going to get more of it. And, yeah, that I'm excited about. From a marketing perspective, many of you have probably noticed that we began marketing acceleration about 1.5 years ago. We brought on an excellent marketing team, and they've done an amazing job. And SaltStack's visibility, the open source community has grown significantly in the last 1.5 years and 2 years. And I'm deeply proud of our marketing team, and I'm very excited at the fact that we're going to have more acceleration inside of product and marketing, and that subsequently we will probably be able to have more open source priorities and more open source emphasis. There have been many days where I felt that we have been struggling in a maintenance mode and that we haven't been able to push forward. For those of you who've been with the project for a long time, it used to be that I would just come out with new stuff all the time. And we haven't seen that as much. And that's a lot of the reasons why I've made POP and other things, so that it's easier for us to build a larger ecosystem. So yeah, it's all about acceleration. All right, did I miss anything?
Yeah, there's one, Tom, that I think is a little bit different from the others, and actually I just got a ping on it, which is worth highlighting. The question is related to the release schedule changes, and if there are any based on VMware's product release schedules. I think we can answer that very simply in two ways. The first is the affirmative to the plans that Sage and team drive for us, which is there is no changes team. You know, Magnesium is on track. We're working through that. You know, we've done the code freeze shifts to accommodate, you know, some changes for things like Tiamat, et cetera, that are coming in. So we're all very excited about that. And of course, we've timed it all such that it can be there right with SaltConf, where we can sort of cheer on to that. One of the things that the VMware team shared with us, which is exciting from our perspective, is that they actually have a similar cadence for you know, the classic delivery models. They deliver every quarter, and that's sort of a cadence that they've maintained, and you can see that publicly based on the release cycles that they have. And of course, they've been you know, out there delivering through SaaS, which is something that we have been looking forward to, et cetera, for the future. And so we hope to bring in, you know, the experience, expertise, joint collaboration to also have that type of a mechanism where, you know, you can update far more frequently, you know, down to daily or weekly and so on and so forth. So the schedules happen to be the same in terms of the cycles. So I don't anticipate, you know, that would deviate from what we have. And then in terms of our current commitments, there is no change for our upcoming release, Magnesium, and any, of course, the sort of releases that support it. And then we have a couple of questions in the chat. Some very important ones that Janae has already answered, which is, are the stickers going to be boring? And the good news is Janae is actually on the phone, and Janae is the master behind many of our stickers. And so she's taken that personally automatically and said, absolutely not, it's going to go even better. And by the way, for those who have not visited the store, I've learned a couple of times that the store remains a little mystery. The store is out there, and there's going to be a fresh batch, as Janae said, for SaltConf.
Yeah, if I can chime in, I'll just turn my video on. We have a brand new sticker right now. If you haven't seen the Hasselhoff sticker, you've got to go to store.saltstack.com and check it out. It's pretty funny. So the stickers will continue to be phenomenal. Don't worry. We wouldn't let them be boring.
Yes. So yeah, thank you for that. And I think, what other questions?
I do have to rebuttal really quickly because Janae made fun of me for liking K-pop on the hacks the other day. And so Janae is the one who came up with the David Hasselhoff sticker because she loves German music.
I'm guilty of loving the German music, but the sticker was a team effort.
Okay, let's give a chance to see if questions came from other channels. Cassandra, do you have any through Twitch?
We had one through Twitch, and then we had kind of a long one from Zoom. So we'll go with the Twitch one, and I think we already addressed this, and we don't necessarily know. But somebody wants to know, is there any chance of Salt Enterprise being included or heavily discounted with their VMware Vsphere licensing and support?
Yeah, I think it's too frankly premature to answer that. I know Alex is on the phone, and he's already in close collaboration with the product team, and they'll have some plans and so on. And I think the appropriate thing to share is that as these things get decided and known, then they'll be shared. Unless Alex, you would like to please add any further clarity on this.
Yeah, I would just reiterate that we're having those discussions. As Tom has mentioned, this is not a closed deal. So none of that stuff's been solidified. If you look at the timing of everything, SaltConf is where we hope to have a lot of that buttoned down and can speak to a lot of those answers, those questions directly. So if you haven't registered, take the time and register, because that'll be a great stepping off point once this has officially closed, or hopefully will have closed by then.
Okay, and then there was a very important question that somebody had asked. They wanted to know if all the products are going to be renamed to start with the letter V. So
a lowercase v, correct? It's got to be the lowercase v.
Yes, that was a very important question. And then somebody else said they'd ask specifically about open sourcing of Delta Proxy, knowing that we've been looking at that for a while. In Slack, Mo mentioned that it's a special case that we could perhaps sometimes discuss in the open hour. Can you discuss, or do you have any statements about the forward-looking features?
Yeah, I actually can address that one and say a couple of things. The first thing is, as Tom mentioned, we've had, a history of being able to, of course, work some of these capabilities directly in the open, and in other cases, graduate something that we might have had inside of the enterprise back into the open, and so on and so forth. The experience we've had with Delta Proxy is that Delta Proxy is an incredibly intricate piece of work that we had to do, the way we've implemented and designed it, that is really starting to get into the middle of very specific Juniper modules interacting with Juniper, very specific Arista modules interacting with Arista. And also that many of the clients who have used it in a production context and in a production sense have really required that we keep up, maintain it, give it dedicated resources and focus that goes hand in hand with the support stream that they're getting in enterprise. The expectation being that if you're running, 100,000 fleet of network devices and you're becoming incredibly dependent on the Delta proxy, you would want to have both the support characteristics, but also to keep up with the changes from version to version, firmware to firmware, et cetera, that's coming up from a lot of those partners. At this point, I say it's a special case because we actually are still developing the Delta proxy, believe it or not. We are still actually evolving it such that it can become standalone-ish for us to then make a business decision in the future as to, is it now been created enough that it can be open sourced and maintained in that context? Or is it still something that requires a lot of dedicated hand-holding and integration with the rest of the enterprise product to make it work the way that many of the existing users are demanding? Believe you me, conceptually, Delta proxy is simple. Implementation-wise, we've come to learn it's far more involved, and it's demanding a lot of specific attention, engineering-wise, integration-wise, testing-wise, etc. So Gary, that's where we currently stand. And then, of course, as always, in the future, with all things in the product plans, etc., there is always an opportunity for something like that to move out, etc. And as Alex said, once we get further down the lines, those kind of decisions will be made. Gary, did I answer your question? And you can answer in the chat if you have a follow-up, or direct DM me, please, if you also have some follow-up, and I'll address it here live on the call. We do have another question that came to my DM, Cassandra, unless you have one or other team members have it.
I do not have any questions right now.
Tom, do you have any in your DM?
I'm just looking again. Let's see, you may have missed it, but I think I missed. Did you say SaltStack Enterprise will still be available for existing new customers? Yeah, so a question is, will SaltStack Enterprise still be available? And the answer is yes. The SecOps products are still available, Comply and Protect. Those aren't going anywhere. Yeah, so those.
And to be clear on those, those aren't going anywhere, and we're executing on the roadmap that we've previously defined and discussed with customers. So that those products are continuing forward, current course and speed, as we go into the latter part of this year and early next year.
So I actually had another question, two questions came in. Thank you, Alex, for that. So the question, one of them, I think we've already addressed, Tom, in what you said, which is, are there any specific changes to SecOps? And at that time, there are no changes to SecOps. We'll continue to offer those products, etc., as Alex mentioned. And I think the context of the question was related to the carbon black component of VMware. And so the simple answer is no changes relative to that. The second in here is that it said you mentioned, when you disagreed with Tom, you mentioned that you will continue to improve the process with regards to PRs and so on. Can you elaborate and remind the team of those actions? Yes, happily to. So team, I'll try and do that in a very concise way. I know we have a few minutes left, so we get to answer any more questions that folks have. Remember, as a group, as a team, as a custodian, guardians of our community, our number one duty is to facilitate the things that are most important to the whole community and make sure that we address those. And one of them had really been in the context of improving the life of the contributor to the SOL project. And digging underneath that, there has been a couple of areas that Sage and Megan and Wayne and Gareth and Tyler and everybody put our heads around, everybody put their head around and said, what are those top issues and what can we do about them? The few of them were, help us improve the test infrastructure. During the last year, we've been able to lower the test suite burden from 9+ hours down to 3.5 hours. And we're continuing to go to a journey to actually improve that down with the goal of getting to somewhere down to the 30 minutes and even further. Not only did we do that at the expense of just cleaning up tests and so on, but we actually improved flaky tests, we added tests, we added automation, we changed the way that we do the builds. That's an example of something that was a deterrent that we worked on. And my thanks go to Pedro and the rest of the team who rallied to get that, including the updates that we've done around PyTest. A second area that was really critical from the community's point of view is the notion and idea of, can I speed up the life cycle from the moment I submitted my PR to the moment that it actually gets merged? And to that end, we set ourselves an incredible amount of goals to try and get something submitted down to actually merge within the context of a week, where today we've had some of them go even longer and longer. Now we recognize that we've been transitioning into our new processes, including the fact that we had a PR backlog that we needed to burn through, etc. And so I'm very happy to say that, and Sage can correct me, I think our whole backlog is down to below 600, which is something incredible from what we've seen in the past. And we are determined to continue to burn that and allow some further automation that is supported by things such as bots, etc., that can automate the review process, down to actually the testing process, the validation in terms of the final merge, and then getting it in. In terms of helping with some of these PRs, we've instituted boards that gave people clarity to understand which things are we going to go after when, et cetera, et cetera. The list is too long to simply just cover in a few minutes, and I hope that we'll get a blog published to kind of celebrate not just the sort of the work that was done by members of the core team, but frankly celebrate just the incredible passion everybody's put into improving this process, from Eric to Max, to Curl, to everybody else, Mike Place, that's been really helping us to do better. And I'll tell you that one of the things I looked at most recently was just, this is a milestone. So you look back at history and you see how has the project gone. And it's incredible to see that we still have so many people in the project who have started 9 years ago, back in 2011, who are still contributing to this day. And that the portion of people who are non-core team members who are contributing has significantly increased in the last year. So we thank everybody for making this the great community that it is. And we're determined to continue to do these improvements. Cassandra, Tom, Alex, rest of team, any questions that came up? Other ones that we want to answer?
I'm scrolling through Slack right now just to make sure we didn't miss anything from our IRC folks, but I don't see any questions there. SSC is still available. Yeah, okay.
And I will reiterate what Gareth said in the chat, that Stalebot has died a good death and will not be returning.
We should definitely hold the RIP's ceremony.
Yes.
So I guess, Tom, you get the closing word rounded off for us today. Thank you, everybody who's been with us. Just for me personally, for today's call, it's an important call.
Yeah, this has been a big week for us. This is going to be a big transition. But you have my commitment. I made a commitment to the open source community in 2011, where I stated that I'm committed to open source, and I stand by that commitment. And my confidence in VMware is high. I firmly believe that they will take good care of SALT, and that they will take good care of this community. And I deeply appreciate everyone who has been on this journey thus far, and who will continue on it. And thank you all for your contributions, your support, and everything that you have done and continue to do to build this fantastic community and this fantastic software platform. So thank you.
Is it appropriate to do a hip hip hooray? Hip hip!
Hooray!
Hooray!
Yay!
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Bye, everybody. We'll see you next week.